Hey everybody, this is Justin and Heather,
Hi.
PR20 Chat TV this week, and we were thinking about talking this week about the difference between influencers and brand evangelists or brand ambassadors, and this is something we talked about on the chat this week, and a lot of the conversation was which group was more important, or is one group more important than the other. So I don't know, Heather, what kind of conversation did you see about it Tuesday? What do you think?
I think it was interesting how there was confusion about the difference between evangelists and ambassadors, and is there even a difference? So I guess for the purpose of the discussion, in my head, how I define the two, I think the influencers are the people who have the big reach or the ability to make other people take some sort of action, and then evangelists are your biggest fans, so people who love your product or love your service and just think that you're, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think those are two distinct audiences, though, and both of them require some sort of cultivation, but it's a different approach, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to think about it in my head and say, okay, an influencer can be an evangelist.
Right.
But they don't always have to be. But
right.
See, now I'm confusing it in my head as I talk about it. So I can see where the confusion came from, I saw people defining it, in a lot of different ways, just like you did. I think kind of agree the same way that, influencers have the bigger audience, they have the bigger, community built up already, potentially. And so they've got that trust already with a group
and
of
not
people.
even necessarily bigger. It could just be really engaged, because you could have an influencer who has a very niche blog for your industry that maybe isn't big, like they're not an A-list,
right.
Twitter celebrity or something like that, but they might have a really engaged audience, and so I think that could still make them an influencer, even if they don't have necessarily a huge network. It might be that their niche is just the right network.
Right, they're targeted, right? It makes sense for the brand.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
No, I think that's a really good point. But evangelists, you're right, are your most, maybe your most passionate fans that are going to talk about your brand. And I think one thing to factor in with the evangelist piece specifically too is like the offline word of mouth.
Right.
And how they might talk, about you away from when they're sitting in front of a computer. Because
yeah.
I can think of people who don't have a huge online network, but have a huge offline network.
So I have a story about that. I have a client, it's a startup in Boston, and they have a product that targets parents of infants. And so there's this woman she just loves the product. She has like zero online network though, but she loves the product, and she's really connected in her local community in all of these other ways. And so I would consider her an evangelist, but she's probably also an influencer, because she has the ability to help us spread the word and get the word out to our exact, target market in a very niche community. But she's, just because she doesn't have a strong online network doesn't mean that we should just discount her.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. Influence doesn't just exist online. I think that's something that's always important to remind ourselves of. I know that we're working on a project for one of our clients, and we're just starting it, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But we're trying to combine the two audiences. So we've got a group of bloggers that we've engaged with in the past that we see as influencers. But then there's also going to be a group of more, consumers or customers that have a passion for the brand, and figuring out ways for them to work together, maybe learn from each other, and maybe have them do the same type of tasks, so we can almost see like how people react and respond to the different audiences. So it's going to be really interesting. I don't know if you've seen other brands do something like that or kind of play with both sides of the spectrum, but
right. I think that there's such a emphasis put on getting the influencer, so getting that A-list person who's got 30,000 Twitter followers or whatever to tweet about your product, and that could be good, but there's just as much value sometimes in getting a bunch of evangelists to help you spread the word. Yeah. So how do you tell your clients, how do you reach out to them? Do you reach out to them differently, or would you recommend, so there are lots of PR people who are just getting started with influencer outreach and building, lists of identifying influencers and evangelists. Right. So how do you recommend going about interacting with them and starting to build those relationships?
Yeah, I think it really is just you want to try to get them to look at, PR or customer service or marketing in the right mindset. So for your influencers, I think you mentioned targeting earlier, and that's huge. And you got to make sure that the people that, the influencers or the bloggers you're going after makes sense for your brand. But then I think when you talk about, the other folks that you might target, one of the things it reminds me of is there's a Harvard Business Review article that came out last fall by David Edelman, who actually works for McKinsey, which always makes me laugh. But one of the parts in there is about the bond that customers form with a brand. And, how if you have a really good relationship and you engage them and they continue to be passionate about your brand, they'll never leave. And so I think nurturing those relationships can be great PR for your brand as well. And so, it's like when people look at organic versus new business, for instance, in the industry where you work in, and sure, you want to get the new clients and you want to bring on the new relationships, but it's important to nurture those ones that you already have, because those can be the people that are most passionate about what you're doing.
Right. From a PR perspective, too, there's probably a lot less of a learning curve if you're working with the evangelists as opposed to working with influencers who maybe don't know you. So they might be more willing to help you spread the word, or to whatever the call to action is, they might be more willing to engage with that because they already know you and they have this affinity for your product and they trust the company already. So we were working on an event and we were trying to help, get the word out about this event. And we had a couple people tell us, like, it sounds like a really good event, but we don't know your product, and so we're not comfortable helping to spread the word about it, which is totally fine and absolutely makes sense. And my client actually was funny and, said that that's actually a nice breath of fresh air instead of the person just, passing along the information, that they were thinking about it from their own perspective, that, they have a reputation to uphold, and so they didn't want to spread that information without learning more about the company. And so now we're going through this process and they're, interviewing the CEO and learning more about the company, but it was nice to see that difference. But that's, I think, it's a big learning curve with influencers versus evangelists.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you're right. Companies that you just talked to that are getting started with this, they're going to want the big names, right? They're going to want the big brands. I saw a joke in a post the other day, can you get me on Oprah, right? So I think that the targeting piece that you mentioned, though, is just really, really important. If no other reason, then sometimes you can form that relationship like you're talking about, and you can actually get to know the person. I think influencer or brand ambassador, if it's not, the highest level person that gets all these pitches every day, and it's actually somebody that makes a lot more sense for your audience.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us today. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I think this is one that has a lot of different points of view. So if you have other ideas, share them in the comments and let us know what you think.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.